Hello and welcome everybody to another edition of the Playbook for Performance podcast. I'm your host, Shauna Corden, and my mission is to make work fun again by building better leaders. In the next couple months, we're doing a 20-week challenge on building your resilience, and this week we're going to be talking about restoring your integrity. So if you're just joining us, why do we want to restore our integrity, or why do we want to build our resilience? Well, a resilience helps us bend instead of break when times get tough. So we really want to create strong people who are resilient and can bounce back from adversity, whether it's stubbing your toe or losing your job. So the more that we can work on the skills to do this is the equivalent of weight training to build your muscles. The more that we address each of these foundational issues, the better off you're going to be and the more resilient you'll become. So, when it comes to restoring your integrity, we are not talking about a moral compass of right and wrong. Who gets to decide that? That's a pretty difficult thing to decide. But we are talking about staying true to you and what's important to you. So, when it comes to integrity, you're either in or you're out. And most people have a pretty good idea when they're going against their own grain. It shows up in terms of feeling badly about something. You might have physical ailments when you're out of integrity. And we have talked about integrity quite a bit in the podcast in previous sessions. We've talked about the idea of the word integral or integrity talks about the structural strength of something, whether it's a building, whether it's an airplane, etc. If it doesn't have integrity, it will fall apart. And we want you to have that when it comes to your personal compass and how you operate as a human. So each of us have different needs for the degree of integrity we need to operate in. For example, you might feel very comfortable telling a little white lie to save someone's feelings because it's better to be kind than to be right. Things like that could be really important to you. But it is something that's constantly a choice. Now, I, at one time or another, work with every client on integrity. And here are some of the symptoms that show up when I go, maybe we ought to address this in a session. So sometimes it's confusion. They just can't figure out where to get started or what they want to address or what their goals should be. And so I want to have them look at the things that are really upsetting them or causing them difficulty and tackle those first. And we did that a little bit with our second lesson on tolerations. Okay. If I hear a lament of nothing is for me, meaning I'm doing stuff for everybody else, and I'm hearing some resentment, which means that either they're being a little bit of a pushover and they're not standing up for themselves, or they're in martyr mode and they give and give and give from an empty cup. That's usually where I hear that. If they have difficulty in making decisions, they don't really have a compass point that says, this is how I choose to spend my time, my money, direct my actions. That famous line from Parenthood where Steve Martin is having this discussion with his wife. And she says, do you really have to go now? And he goes, my whole life is have to. That's a really good indication that you're out of integrity. It means you're operating by everyone else's standards rather than your own. In that similar vein, compromising. So if you really have a strong preference for something and you don't voice it, and I will say that the peacemakers of the world, or if you know your disc style, the S's of the world, are more prone to this because their whole soundbite in life is let's all get along. And so they will be the one to make the sacrifice because peace is so important to them. But that only lasts so long before they and then you see this eruption. And that's actually one of the other symptoms I didn't put in a bullet here, is when people start reacting instead of responding to situations that upset them. Okay? If I hear a client say something like, my values aren't here, meaning the community I'm in, the organization I'm in, the family I'm in, that they are all operating from a different playbook. So they might see that. Or if you see yourself behaving differently when you're alone versus with others. Now, I don't want to confuse this with character, because character I do think is a moral compass, and we say that character is really defined by what you do when no one's looking. Similar, but not quite the same. This is having others have undue influence, in my opinion. So this is when I'm like, let's talk about this. Let's talk about integrity. So what are the benefits of being in integrity? Well, fewer problems, because it's creating clarity. You have ease in making decisions. You know what is for you, and that you have chosen purposefully to do these things, and you're not compromising on the things that really are important. We've talked about this in previous podcasts about values. That you are in a community that supports the same values that you have, and that you behave the same whether you're at home, whether you're at work, whether you're at church, whether you're on the court, whatever it might be. But you're going to operate the same way. You're not, and there's great value in adjusting our approach with other people based on their needs. And I'm not suggesting that we should be rigid and operate the same way all the time. We do want to have emotional intelligence. We want to operate with finesse and adjust our style to what the situation calls for. But we don't want to compromise how we behave in terms of what we think is true and appropriate for ourselves. And that whole ability to just respond to a situation that's not going well versus reacting. Again, that's another great example of the bending versus breaking when we're under times of stress. So I think it's a great thing to work on this in a constant basis. This might be how you operate in certain situations, whether it might be prayer when you have difficulty, meditation, taking a walk, getting outside, getting some space for yourself to really get clear about this. So one of the best times to really work on integrity is during a holiday break, because it's essentially a retreat from the obligations that we have, whether it be work or other things. We're getting back to people who have known us for a long time. Usually we're around family members, etc. And you can really examine this in terms of, do I want to be this way? How can I get whole? Because our integrity is not just in certain situations, but it's who we are in any given moment. So we really want to get back in touch with ourselves and removed from the influence that our profession or our workplace might kind of impose upon us. I remember many years traveling to the Bay Area. The moment I got on the airplane, it was like, the armor went up. I wasn't going to be warm and outgoing. I was like protecting myself as an introvert, to be in that busy concrete jungle down there. And I don't miss that. So out of integrity to get back in integrity. So one of the best things we can do in this retreat time is practice some extreme self-care. Give yourself lots of space in your schedule. Give yourself lots of space to get things done. Be really intentional about the environment you want to create and what kind of holiday you want to have, regardless of what you're observing. Okay? So that's really what we want to talk about in terms of this integrity piece. I want to leave you with one last sort of formula to get to this. We've talked about getting clear of the past and being present to what's happening. And the more that we can check off those unfinished projects, unresolved situations, things like that, the more clear we'll be. the more that we're aligned with our goals, and this is the perfect time to do goal setting as well, that puts us back in alignment with our values, and also makes sure that our ego isn't overly influencing us. And then finally, personal responsibility. I think this is actually the real epidemic in our society these days, is people are not taking personal responsibility, and that's an essential piece of integrity. So if we look at those three things, then we can say, hey, I'm going to take responsibility to make adjustments in my life so that my life reflects who I really am. So that's our lesson on integrity, really briefly. Don't forget that there is a theme sheet on our site that you can download that'll help you plan kind of weekly goals and weekly consequences for the goal that went along with that if you don't make it. Do invite your friends and family to participate with you. You can start at any time, but we will have 20 lessons in this 20-week challenge. We want you to grow together, and a rising tide lifts all boats. So if you like this YouTube video podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you have comments, if you need help, please do send us a message at podcast@shawnacorden.com. And if you have any kind of examples or questions about the lessons as we go through them, and you'd like some more help, that's the place to send a question, and we can feature you on the podcast. So I hope everybody has a really great week, and we'll see you next time.